In the promotion for Tip 57 vehicle inspections, I mentioned that I believe this is one of the most important things you can do for your business and for your customer. Having a good vehicle inspection process where each vehicle gets thoroughly and completely inspected is valuable to the business in multiple ways, and it's actually valuable to the customer. For the business, it will create the opportunity to sell more stuff. Having a good qualified technician inspect a car that they know and understand, they will find things that other people will miss that are needed or that need to be maintained or that will need to be fixed in the near future. And those are all things that I want to be communicating with my customer about. If you are a company that thinks car count, and you're running discount coupons, then most likely you will have lower opportunity because your vehicle inspections will not be done as completely as they should or as thoroughly as they should, which will create low average repair order and lower productivity and lower profits in most businesses. I would tell you probably 95 to 98% of the shops that are running a discount low ARO model are just not making anywhere near the money that they should or could be making. So the vehicle inspection is extremely important for the shop because it is where we find the work that we get to sell, that we get to make our money on. And it's also extremely important for the shop in another way, and that is if I bring a vehicle into my shop today and we halfway inspect it and we sell the customer $800 worth of stuff that maybe should have been $2,000 worth of stuff, but we didn't find it, we didn't see it, we didn't pay attention to it, we weren't looking. And that customer leaves, and a week later one of those other items breaks, then one of two things will happen. Either the customer will call me and say, hey, I just had my car and I spent $800 and now I have a problem. How come you didn't tell me about it, or what did you do? Or the customer will go somewhere else where they'll tell them that we should have found it and we should have told them about it, and then they won't return to us. So a vehicle inspection, I think, number one, having a great vehicle inspection is important to the shop because it gives us the opportunity to sell more work and to find more work. But it's also important to the customer because my customers come in, they want me to inspect their car. They don't want to see me that often. My customers came in twice a year, about every six months. We had an average repair order 12 years ago that was almost $800 in a general repair shop. And they didn't have to see me again because we told them everything they needed. I can tell you, statistically speaking, at the numbers and looking at the numbers, and that would be the opportunity and the average repair orders that we see in shops, that there are an awful lot of cars that are not being completely and thoroughly inspected, which is not good for the vehicle, it's not good for the customer, it's not good for the business. You can cause poor vehicle inspections by trying to ram too many of them down the throat of the technician or the service advisor. So for instance, here you go, Mr. Tech, I have 2 oil changes to do. Please do a good inspection. And oh, by the way, both those customers are waiting for their cars. We want them done in 40 minutes. Now I've created an instance where the employee can't even take the time to look at the car. So let's talk vehicle inspection. My philosophy is I want to have someone that's really well trained to do a vehicle inspection, and in most cases for me that's a master technician, someone that has been doing this for a while and that knows and understands the cars that they're going to look at. When I was working on cars, the Toyota trucks had a problem with upper control arm bushings that they were frying on one side of the vehicle because of the way the manifold was. And if you knew it, you would see it, you would talk about it, you would sell it to your customer. It was a very positive thing. And if you didn't know it, then you missed it and the customer left, and then later it started doing some damage to the upper control arm, etc. So having a technician that knows and understands the car and that is a good quality tech is of value in my opinion, and that's really who I want. I personally don't really like the C-Tech, the junior guy that doesn't know much that we pay $15 an hour. doing the vehicle inspections, because frankly I just don't think he or she is completely qualified and that they're going to find everything that's really going on with the vehicle. But what I want is to have a vehicle come in, and in our inspection process, which is kind of, I'm going to walk you through this because it was designed by my technicians to make the least amount of steps and to do the most. So the beginning of our inspection process was pull the history of the file on the car, look and see what you've already done if you've already had the car in. And that way you kind of know where you have to put your attention and where you might not have to put your attention. Next, have a set of standards. So standards say when we have a drip is something that touches the floor, and therefore a drip is something that we recommend to our clients. A seep is a minor wetness around an area that doesn't drip, etc. And then a severe leak is a leak that would damage the vehicle. So have a set of standards. Now, by the way, if you'd like standards, I would be happy to send you the standards. You can get us at i4abe.com. Ask for our standard sheet, and I'll be happy to send it to you. You'll want to modify it a little bit. Our oil changes were 6,000 miles, 6 months. You might want to do something different, but make sure that you have standards. And standards are important in the inspection process because of two things. Number one, when do we recommend coolant hoses? Well, the manufacturer says 50,000 miles, 5 years. But frankly, if you're in Phoenix or Palm Springs, California, where it gets to be 124, you probably don't want to let your customers go 50,000 miles or 5 years on a set of coolant hoses. And if you're in Mountain View, California, or somewhere else where the weather is more tepid and it never gets very hot, then you probably don't want to sell them coolant hoses at 5 years. Decide what you feel is best for your customer and make sure that you record that and you keep track of that, and then that's what goes on your standard sheet, and then be able to defend that. Why do I recommend coolant hoses at 6 years, 80,000 miles? Because we're here in Mountain View. We've found that that's when coolant hoses start to seep, start to leak, and have problems, and we want to take care of those so that you never have a problem. I have a truck that is Ford F-150. It's about 7 years old. It's got 70,000 miles on it. It was low on coolant recently, and the heater hoses were leaking because basically they aged from the inside out, and even though they look good on the outside, they started seeping and leaking around the edges, and we had to replace all the coolant hoses on the truck. And by the way, it was kind of past time. And funny thing is, if my shop had mentioned it a year ago, I probably would have said go ahead and do it so that I didn't have to have a problem with my vehicle. So I have a set of standards that we have agreed upon in our business that says this is what we do. Now I'm going to have, when the car comes in, I'm going to have my service advisor go out to the car and look at the car. I want to get a picture of the license plate, back of the car, each side of the car and of the dash, with the key on and the engine running. And then I also got to get the mileage and the VIN number to make sure that my work order is legal in almost every state that I know of, if not every state. So that's the beginning of my inspection. The beginning of my inspection is a service advisor inspection. I also want my service advisor to go online or go into our system and look up the manufacturer's recommendations for that vehicle, so that if my technician misses the manufacturer's recommendations, we still tell our customer, because we owe it to our customer to do a good, thorough inspection to let them know what the manufacturer recommends. Now, and to let them know what we recommend. Next, now my technician grabs the work order, he's looked through the file, now he's gonna go test drive the car. Our initial test drive is about a mile and a half. We make some left turns, we make some right turns, we get the car up to speed, 35, 40 miles an hour. During that, we listen, we pay attention to how it shifts, how it sounds, how it brakes, does it pull, are there any weird noises, any weird smells in the car, any hesitations, etc. So at that very same time, all of my guys had a thermostat, a digital thermostat in their pocket, and in the summertime, they turned the air conditioning on and put the thermostat in the vent to see what the vent temperature was. In our shop, if the vent temperature wasn't if it was above 45 degrees, in our standards we recommended a coolant service, because Most compressors die because of lack of oil, and the oil in today's systems attaches itself to the Freon molecule and is traveled through the system with the Freon, and if there's not enough Freon in the system or enough gas in the system, I think we're still all calling it all Freon, then oil will not be gotten throughout the system, and you'll have premature failure of your compressor. So my guy is checking the vent temp. We have a standard for that. He's rolling up and down the windows to make sure all the windows roll up and down correctly. We're also working the washers and the wipers to make sure the washers squirt and the wipers do their job and don't skip. Then we're going to pull it into our shop. In our shop, we had some mirrors placed, those ones that say objects are bigger than they appear, so that when you pulled in, you could check all the lights without getting out of the vehicle or without calling somebody else. And you could see your brake lights, your third brake light, your tail lights, your turn signals, all of your running lights. You could see all of that, and then you can document if you had a problem there. Next, the vehicle hood was put up, and the technician started on the driver's side with the brake fluid, test the brake fluid. All of my guys had the electric pens to test the brake fluid. We check the power steering fluid, check the engine oil, even though we're going to service this car probably, check the transmission fluid, and looked over the top of the engine to see, are these original coolant hoses? What do the belts look like? Are they worn? Are they cracked? Is there any power steering leaks, any oil leaks that you can see from the top of the vehicle? Now, our system was designed to go from the driver's door around the car back to the driver's door. Now, the tech would also do a visual, finish the circle, come back to the driver's door. Then we would rack the vehicle. We would be on the rack with the hood, but then we would set up the rack and we'd raise the vehicle up about 4 feet. When we raised the vehicle 4 feet, we were able to then go in and look at the brakes with a mirror and a flashlight. Almost all vehicles. We were able to work the suspension a little bit with the tension off of it to see if we have ball joints, tie rods, or any issues there. Then we would go back, so we would go around the vehicle, check all of the suspension. Then we would rack the vehicle all the way up and start at the driver's side. Air pressure in the tires, looking at the tire tread depth, measuring that, looking for oil leaks, CV axles, boots that are torn, water pumps leaking, freeze plugs potentially leaking, those kinds of things. I always tap the exhaust just to see if it rattled, if we had any problems, and that's what I taught my staff to do as they were under the car, and then they come back, and then what I want is my technician to stop and actually fill my paperwork out of all the things they found before they change the oil, so that the service advisor can be working on the estimate while they're changing the oil. At that point in time, once the paperwork was turned in, the technician would then pull the oil filter, oil pan plug, change the oil, service the car, drop it down, recheck the top, fill it with oil, run the car, double check the oil level to make sure it was full, make sure all the other fluids were full, and in our shop, our guys had rags and spray, and they would actually spray off the top of the engine and wipe it down with a cloth, because sometimes that's the only thing your customer sees is if they open the hood, it looks like somebody was in there and it was clean. My dad taught me that 40 years ago, and it's something I've done and had my staff do all the time. So the importance of a good inspection is it's important for the shop, it's important for the business, and I would recommend that you have a written inspection process that you can actually teach and train on. It's one of the processes that I'd make sure that you had. And then you're going to look at your opportunity, what the technicians are finding, and you're going to make judgments about whether or not the cars are being properly inspected. And I would tell you probably in the majority of the shops, more than 50%, probably more than 70% of the shops in the United States, probably Canada too, then the cars are not getting a real good, thorough inspection for different reasons. And it's not good. It's not good for the industry. It's not good for the customer. It's not good for the car. There is some statistical data that if you look up on the US.gov, the last time I looked is about 3 years ago, and it basically said there was about $200 billion worth of work on the US fleet that had not been completed. And I would say it's a combination of three things. One, the technicians didn't find the work, not having a good inspection. Two, the service advisors didn't tell the customer about the work because they didn't want to scare the customer away. And three, the customer decided not to do the work. So I think all three of those are facts. Well, I can work on, whether or not we find it, and I can work on whether or not we know how to present it, and then the customer still gets to decide what they're willing to do. So I hope this is value for you. We have one tip left, and then we're going to start a new project. So thank you so much for your time.
We hope you enjoyed this week's tip. For more information on the concepts we discussed, check out our upcoming classes at www.ifrabe.com/classes, or listen to the Leading Edge podcast at institutesleadingedge.podbean.com, where we discuss business topics just like this one with a panel of industry experts. You can also contact us whenever it's convenient, and we'll set up a free consultation on how the Institute can help you better your business, your life, and the industry as a whole. We'll see you guys next week.